Hello everyone. I hope my voice is loud. I can't speak too loud. But I wanted to give a talk. And right now it's getting close to 3:17 a.m. And I've had a very long day, a lot of moving furniture. 7 hours of moving furniture. But anyways, I wanted to give a talk, and in case my voice is too low and the music is too loud, please let me know. But I think the music should be fine. On my way back home, there was a long drive, and I was thinking that how come moving physical stuff makes me tired, but when it comes to these Mr.Within talks, I don't get tired. And I wondered why. And during the drive, I came to this conclusion that why a person gets tired is because the image they have of the moment changes. That means if something is important, instantly the energy is there, It's like all those people who are lazy, but the moment their boss comes passing by, at their work, they in some sense they become the best employee in that moment. And so there is something about the image a person holds of themselves that affects their energy. Now, something cool happened, when I got home. Sometimes there's this app called TikTok, and when I have a couple minutes to kill, I just I watch those videos, And in one of those videos, there was a scene from Bruce Lee in this film. It was Bruce Lee in this film, and Bruce Lee was, in a sense, it was such a synchronistic moment that Bruce Lee was kind of giving the answer to the question I had on the drive home, And the thing Bruce Lee was saying, I don't remember the exact wording, but it was something in the lines where it's as if like this Kung Fu master is asking Bruce Lee questions about his ability fighting. I don't remember the exact thing, but Bruce Lee says there is no I, there is no enemy, there is no opponent. Can you imagine one of the most incredible fighters on this planet fighting in a state where there is no opponent? What that means is the greatest fighters are not fighting. They're being the victory, Anyways, this inspired me to talk about changing pictures of the world. And that sentence, now I can, I shared what I wanted about Bruce Lee. And just this idea that without the I thought, energy has no timer, has no limit. Everything is made of energy technically, and of course the biological body has its limits. I'm not saying we have immortal energy. What I'm saying, there is something strange that when a person's mindset changes, their energy increases, or there's dormant energy in the body that activates. Or if you want to get too deep about it, you can say in certain schools of martial art, they had this concept where in Japanese they call it ki, and in Chinese they call it chi. And it's this idea that there is a sort of I don't want to suggest a golden core, but just this thing that there is dormant energy, and it's as if there's a sort of yin-yang energy going on in the body, a yin-yang balance. And I don't know if chi or ki, if I remember correctly, I could be off here. I think I'm off, but what it is, it's a dormant reserve of energy where it's like if you're being the yang, it's the yin, or if you're being the yin, it's the yang. In some sense, it is energy that is not limited to ideological use. And you kind of see it in these Shaolin monks that they just practice meditation, and Zen meditation is a part of the practice, part of the teachings of Shaolin monks. realms, but what it is, it's as if like a state of self-control. And if you have if the sense of self in constant flux of ideology, you cannot control it. So really, a state of self-control can only be a state of no self, where there is no self that is changing, in which it ruins our control, Anyways, the title, there's something I need to say about it. I have created this concept where I say it's some sentences are double-edged. Two concepts I'm very proud of that I've created, or at least I've noticed. One of them is this idea of letter linking. So let's say you have, let's say it's called letter linking, where in the sense of, let's say you have the word fear and you have the word rage, and where the last letter is the same as the first letter of another word, those two words can link. So you can create a new word, call it fear rage, the fear age. But like in some sense, what I mean is that the two words fear and rage, they letter linked. One letter linked either the first letter with the last letter. Another thing is the idea of double-edged sentences, where in my own lectures I have noticed that sometimes I'm saying a sentence where it can be heard in two ways. The title of this episode is a double-edged sentence, and I want to explain that. Where I say changing pictures of the world, it means like the pictures we have of the world change. And then another view of it is we are the ones changing the pictures of the world. So we consciously change the pictures of the world, or unconsciously. So the sentence is double-edged in the sense of unconsciously, whether we like it or not, pictures change of the world, or we change the picture of the world, right? And this is a very, I would say, crucial distinction. That what is changing the moment, is it us or is something else? And that's where the whole relationship of divinity comes in. Life is a relationship with image. Right now, who is speaking to you is an image. The idea of Mr.Within, I somehow managed to bypass the image of it, because the moment the word within is beside the concept of Mr. Mr. Within, in some sense it's suggesting that there is something inner, and the inner for mankind is really unknown. There's really two, you can say the unknown is everywhere, but it's not everywhere at first. If you go into the outer realm, so right now I'll give you an example. If I wanted to walk towards the edge of the universe, it would in some sense at some point, just like Frodo moving past the Shire, at some point I would move beyond the edge of the non-known universe, right? The known observable universe. And we have done this as, we have as a species, and through the advancements of science and the Hubble telescope and the satellites we've sent in, beyond orbit, we have a sense of how big the universe is. And even at some point, somebody's like, yo, there's a giant black hole in space. You understand? So in the outer realms, we reach unknown variables. We reach the unknown. Right now, as we continue and go beyond the cities of knowledge we have built on the surface of the rock. But in the inner realms, you will notice something incredible. In the inner realms, what is being observed is known, who is doing the observing is unknown. This inner awareness, or this awareness that there is something looking out through your eyes that cannot be defined by what it is seeing because it is previous to the sight there, right? That means the way I know that I am, for example, not this laptop I'm using to give this talk, because I am outside of it, observing it, right? It's as if there is an observer in the equation. Right? The phenomena can be observed. Like right now, I can observe outside of my body. I can be aware if someone is behind me or something is around me, or I hear a noise, whether it's a car, whether it's a vehicle, whether it's an animal, whether it's a car, whether it's whatever it is. Right? It's as if like I can in some sense fathom. The inner realms gives you an ability to exist outside of your body, but outside of your body in a world that is the copy paste of the outer realms. So it's like right now as I'm talking, the brain is copy pasting literally the outer realm. Like the outer realm it has access to. And this copy paste of the brain of the outer realms creates a world that is malleable for the inner self. So what I mean is kind of like, it's as if it's like the world is strangely like a coloring book. Existence is the outlines and experience is coloring it in. A sentence that I have always felt but never said is really that philosophers are world seekers. They are those who are not satisfied with the world they see, then there are those who are satisfied. If I was satisfied with the world I saw now, I wouldn't care about the future. It would be as if the present is enough. But the reason we have loss, the reason we have absence, the reason we have change in this world is to awaken us to the nature of the future. There's many, I will tell you, I think right now, when I look at my whole life until this point, I can't tell you how many philosophies, how many systems of reality I have observed, and how many of those systems try to, in some sense, dissolve into an absolute, or in some sense, how many of those systems are, what it is? It's like, It's like somebody who existed in the past is occupying the attention of someone who existed in the present. Now the person in the present is like, if I choose not to be occupied by the past, then what will the present moment be filled? And this is where even if you get rid of your past suffering, you will notice you cannot avoid the future. A lot of, I would say, enlightenment tactics in like different schools of thought is really to get the person to get over their past, and the way they do it is by nullifying time. But I feel the outer realms won't give in that easily, won't give out, or I should say the outer realms, for some reason I wanted to say the outer realms wouldn't give up, in the sense that the outer realms will bring time. That means time is a natural byproduct of individual subject moving in a giant object as an object, right? Because we're not 100% an object, guys. I'm telling you, if we were 100% an object, I wouldn't be talking. Speech is not an objective thing. Speech is a subjective art. And a subjective art ushers in new dimensions. That means that's the thing about art. You know, so many people feel on this planet they're not creative, not realizing every day they wake up, their whole life force has to be creative. Every moment of your life, your intelligence, whether you like it or not, is engaging existence, right? Even when we're asleep, we could be in a dream state, but the body's just chilling in the bedroom, you know? So what I mean by this is that it is, life is like an image, guys. And every moment is like a snapshot. If we stop moving right now, and whoever's listening to me, let me see how many people are on. Okay, 2 people. So 2 people are listening to me. 2 viewers. So out of these 2 viewers, or I would say, I want to ask the 2 viewers to just for a second, just stop seeing, no, stop moving. Not stop seeing, stop physically moving, and just look at your moment and tell me if you feel it's like a photograph. That was a remarkable realization I got about the sensory perception. Its dimension is based on attention. Its depth is based on our attention. So, you know what it is? It's like if you don't pay attention to the world, it's in 1 dimension. If you pay a little more attention to the world, it becomes into 2 dimensions. If you pay way more attention, you'll see so many more dimensions to life. And what these dimensions imply are the relationship where the known mind, where your memory is being challenged by the vastness of the universe, right? Because right now, who I am is my memories. Like it's like that's how fascinating it is. We don't have memories, we are memories, right? The eyes of the human being, beyond the identification of memory and imagination, which are kind of like 2 sides of the same coin, same transcendental coin. You know what it is? Memory is the mind when you look at the past, and imagination is the mind when you look at the future. But at all moments, it is mind. And the mind is like an addition, something in us that notices what an animal does. And the moment we could define an animal, in some sense, we have. It's like the moment we noticed we were animals, or we noticed the animal, that was the moment where we were no longer an animal. And the moment where we notice the limits of the human being is going to be the moment in human history where humans will no longer be human. So I will tell you right now, even though we have no choice, we have to play along with the theatrics of the human story, but I am sure many human beings as I speak right now, just through their exposure, through the rhythms of language and intelligence on this planet, they are not human. So what is taking place is that a consciousness that has identified through its past is coming to the neutrality of a present moment, and the presence of the moment is realizing the future can be anything in regards to how the free will is in some sense directed. And really, we have been like, that's kind of like society, where society will not tell you what the future is. Society is waiting for us to be the future, to bring the future. future, if you notice, is novelty. What it means is that the new is considered the future, and it's as if the human brain, let's say somehow all human brains were for a moment like part of one field of intelligence. Let's just fathom that. And novelty would be in a sense what we are. You know what it is? It's like beyond familiarity. It means like there's infinite types of self a person can be in this realm. And if they, let's say a person does something and they're a good person, and they do something, they're a bad person, and then after a while in life the person's like, what is this? Am I just a good and bad person? Like, am I just shifting between these? Eventually the person will notice the future has no good and bad. The future has a geometric relationship with us. It is, a lot of things that happen in this life, they don't have meaning at first. Meaning is a privilege of a conscious engagement. There is this concept in certain schools of thought called past life regression. I've seen books on this in regards to a hypnotist angle. I've seen books on this in regards to a ceremonial angle. I've seen books on this in regards to a mechanical angle or mechanistic angle. When it comes to, let me say, the ceremonial angle, it's kind of like the native Amazonian approach, the shamanic approach. The shamanic approach is not caring for, it's not, it's like the shaman was following the rhythm of the divinity of time or how the moment moved. So ceremonially, that would translate, for example, they would have these ayahuasca ceremonies or, vision quest ceremonies, where the person it had nothing to do with the sort of substance they were using, but it had to do with the type of moment they were entering. Some people think an object, like some part of the moment, is important than the rest, but I would say the wise ones of this world, they have noticed that it's like there is, the awareness of the person is like an endless sphere they're in. You are the center of your sphere of intelligence. Never forget this. In any system, and in the inner realms, man has authorization. Has in some sense hilariously a divine authority, especially if you look at it from a theological angle, in the sense that the soul of man is the God of man. What else can it be? From the theological lens. From the secular lens, the soul of man is a giant question mark. All that is going on is like human beings are in like the same human existence, to be honest. We all have like one common server we're logged in, but in accordance to the different types of conscious beings, I would say maybe currently 40% of the planet's population is not ideologically functioning. They are functioning as presence. And usually when a person gets older, they do transition into being a presence beyond their personality rather than a personality before the presence. Because when you're a personality, all that a personality can do is act like it's alive and break. But the presence of the person is what continues even if change occurs. So what it means, it's like saying that from the beginning of your life until now, there has been an unknown moment watching itself, or a known moment watching itself in an unknown way. In these three ways of past life regression techniques, the ceremonial one I feel is the most accurate because it is consciously entered, right? The other ones are consciously entered too, but they're different, right? So a past life regression through hypnotism, that's kind of messed up. That's not actually consciously entered. Pretty much what it is that there were certain psychiatrists that were taking advantage of their position as a psychologist. I should say psychologist, maybe. I shouldn't say psychiatrist, because a psychiatrist can diagnose, can prescribe medicine, but a psychologist cannot. So let's say some psychologists, they would bring in their clients, and the person would sit down, and the psychologist like, let me explore this client's unconscious mind, and through a hypnotism, which means pushing the person into an unconscious rhythm, the person would have a dialogue with that person's unconscious. So imagine a client is interested to know his past life. He goes into, I read this book, really, a psychologist had done this, I forget the person's name, but probably if you Google it, you'll find it. But what it is it's like, so this person would bring his clients, they would lie down, the client knew what was going on, but the person would take him into a hypnotic state where the client would go into a semi-sleep state. What that means is the hypnotist would push the client into their inner realms, without the client realizing how, right? In the ceremonial shamanic angle, the shaman knows how they're entering, the inner realms. But in regards to that kind of past life hypnotism thing, it's like that a person doesn't know. So this psychologist had endless conversations with the unconscious of the mind of the person who had come into that psychology session. So what that means is like this, and the stories the psychology had written in the book, he was talking like to the God self of the person, the oversoul of the person, how there was souls would in some sense incarnate in groups, and that when they would incarnate in groups, there would be one soul who was like, like the kind of main antenna, not antenna, but like the main receiver of that group. And there were people like, what that means? That means imagine like a family, and imagine there's a middle child in that family, and that middle child is being paid the least attention. Poetically, that middle child could be the great beacon of the soul. That means that middle child's karma could be protecting all the karma of the other ones, other family members. Anyways, it was this very complex book, but pretty much one route is that through hypnotism, unconsciously the person reveals it, but then the psychologist has to tell, or like the hypnotist has to tell the person like, yo, I talked to your like unconscious self, and all the stuff you said and all that, right? Or imagine how hilarious would it be. Imagine a psychologist has a confidentiality agreement, but the person they're talking to has multiple personalities. So imagine when the person changes personality, it's like the psychologist like, I have a confidentiality agreement. I can't break that. But what it is of course human minds are happening in different ways. I'm talking about this playfully, but it's a serious matter, because the fragmentation of the psyche means that it's like divide and conquer. That means the person has gone through an experience in this life where their identity has been divided more than duality. When I say more than duality, that means everybody has, like when we say we can be good or bad, that's kind of acknowledging two types of self, right? two types of self potential. And I would say these two types of self potential, good and bad, they're pretty basic, but beyond good and bad, unless it's non-ideological, then there is a sort of psychology fragmentation, because you can say a person is like whichever memory they remember or wherever their attention goes, right? So right now as I'm speaking, it's like I have access to two types of information. It's not that it's not like my psychology is fragmented, but it's kind of like I'm this presence of a moment, and if I remember my past, I identify with that sense of self. If I remember something that happened recently, I identify with that. If something happened right now as I'm giving the talk, I'm identifying with the sense of self of a speaker, But let's say in the future I'm going to be sleeping, I'm going to identify as someone who's asleep. Subconsciously. Now, so one approach to past life regression was ceremonial, one approach was hypnotic. The ceremonial one was kind of like the spirit of nature approach or meditation approach. Then there's the one where it is sub-interference, or I shouldn't call it sub-interference, like I should say it's like a talk. There are methods where you just question something, and when you question it long enough, the system breaks. Just like saying like why. Imagine somebody says like there's gravity, and then somebody says why, and we say because of the way the 4 forces and the 17 particles and whatnot, and how there's a relationship between there, and then the person's like why. Eventually we see the person's why is a reverse engineering into the void. So questioning the system takes the system takes the attention of the system to its emptiness. And a lot of yogis have used this algorithm. In the type of past life regression that is machine based, you can say it could be in the future that a machine is built where somebody just connects it and it just throws probabilities of what they could have been, or maybe there's a greater type of memory that human beings can access, but because they think they're the ego, they cannot access it. But what it is it's like, and it's like somebody helping you to remember your past life. And the issue with that is that it's like anything, a person, any system, anything that becomes robotic, I am telling you, it's like the soul has left that moment. Without the activity of the free will, the soul can't identify itself. If we were all statues, we would not have personalities, we would not have individuality, we would not have, believe it or not, even the notion of souls, right? It's very hard to tell if a statue has a soul. Maybe you're a rogue pantheist that may think like statues have souls, but the whole point is, if we didn't move, it would just be a photograph, and a photograph doesn't have the dynamism of life experience that we consider the moving soul or the prime mover of the attention being, right? I have personally, through nature, attained certain realizations of my past identity. There was a time in my life where I felt, okay, maybe I have past lives, but then when I looked into the concept of a future life, when that concept opened up to me, it was as if the future life was where all the past lives were heading. And this concept of a past life, guys, I'm talking about this in Western society, right? And in Western society, they're like, buddy, you think you were alive before this moment, before your physical existence, And I would say, sure, in Western society, secularism doesn't want to see anything other than an object, sure. But in Eastern societies, the past life was, you know what it was? It was like as if the more we go back into history, the more there were beings that were being unconsciously multidimensional. For some reason, in my youth, I mentioned that in my outer realms, I was very shy and quiet. When it came to my inner realms, and even, I would say, internal, subjectively animate entity relationships, that means if I felt like there has been many moments where I have gone into a room and I have felt something in the room, and there's nothing in the room, but I have felt something, and my mind's had an option to give that emotion an instantaneous image to see what that image would be, or in some sense not to give it an image. I tend to be a person who, first language deceived me, then I had a conversation poetically with the spirit of language. Then images deceived me, and I had a conversation, let's say, with the spirit of images. And let's say the same thing with sound. Eventually, one's attention can only be a sort of supreme center of the world. There's two centers of the universe, or there's one center to two universes. The mind is, first of all, a magnificent instrument. It is like a pen that attention uses to write with, And the world is like the canvas, the mind is the pen, and the sensory perception is the ink. And when one realizes the canvas is empty, that means before we existed, who could judge what, And I don't even know how people have been judging temporary creatures where every day they wake up, they have a new angle to their life. You can even say, and this is a very bold statement, but you can say that this whole system of individualism doesn't match the psychology we're given. Our psychology is every moment, as new information enters, the consciousness, the whole world changes, right? The whole world has to, it's like a tribe, and when a new person enters the tribe, the whole tribe has to readjust. Or poetically, let's say in the future, aliens land and they want to live among us, right? We human beings have to change, like our attitude has to adjust. As attention, let me start from here. As attention reverse engineers, and let's say your memory was a staircase, and your memory was a staircase the person had climbed in this life down. Let's say you climbed down from a staircase, and all your memories from, or let me give a different analogy, because time is moving forward. Let me say, from the beginning of your life, you have been walking on a staircase, and right now, as you're hearing me, you're in the middle of that staircase. Now, every human being is on their own staircase, okay? And this staircase, we don't know its beginning, and we don't know its end, guys. Can you hear me? Can you like consider this for a second? Everybody is walking on a staircase that they, in some sense, don't know the beginning and ending of. Now, let me tell you why you can't know the beginning and why you can't know the ending, and why this system has a curvature to it. The reason we can't know the beginning is because when you go back into your memories, and I'm someone who's done this, I have reverse engineered through my memories and through not only the whims of nature, but just through the karma I was bestowed. What happens is the person is trying to find their earliest memory. Now, from a strange angle, the earliest memory is in the abyss and it cannot be found, and whatever is being remembered cannot be the past. That means the past was its own moment, you know, and right now, if I try to remember the past, whatever amount of remembrance I try, it will never be, do you know, the same as now, because I am remembering the past from who I am now, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is, like, anytime we remember the past, the influence of who we are now is there on that memory. In my inner realms, I went to a point where abstract identification was taking place. So let's say it's limit. So you go back to your earliest memory, then you go back to visualization. So it's like you're reverse engineering a storyline based on reality, and as you're going back, the more you get closer to the unknown, the more uncertain the memory becomes, but there is image. That's the crazy thing, that it's so difficult to say if it's the past of the person or if it's the present. Because if it's the present, that means time is a simulation, so a past life would be a simulation from the present moment. But if there is a past life, then in some sense, whatever content the person finds, and it's based on how real the content is. That means there's a difference from someone who's like, in my past life I was Buddha because I meditated for 5 minutes, and someone who actually remembers memories and, you can say, movements of a sense of self, right? And the crazy thing is, we have empathy. You see what I mean? Empathy means that we can see another sense of self outside of ourselves and think we're that. That is what empathy is. And when it comes to, I would say, past life and future life, or let me just wrap up past lives. You go back to a moment where it's just a recognition that there is nothing else, there was nothing else other than your movement in your consciousness. So when one goes, so what it is we think we're in the creation state, but it's like before the creation state, the whole unknown is the creator state. And we think location is where things are happening, but location is what everything is creating. So what I'm saying is, eventually the person goes to a point where they don't know what is there after emptiness. And it is a sort of whatever the antenna or the image the mind receives. Do you see what I mean? Because it's like we are not the images we wear. We are wearing language. We are not it. And the whole world is acting like we're language. And the whole challenge of it is, if we were beyond language, how would we build a civilization for that? You know? It's like, are we ready to be silent, multidimensional presences of a universal sector that have transcended the limits of the individual, or do we still want to be, that playful animal running in the grasslands? So there is a suggestion. You know what it is it's like an airport where you, as a human being, have a choice how your attention is moving in the space-time continuum, and that is the greatest honor. That is the, I would say, coolest thing about life, that you have access to your own presence. The presence of others, sure, we don't have access, but to the presence of ourselves, to what is in the domain of our awareness. That means for a moment, just fathom that your mind is a train passing by. For a moment, just consider that your mind is everything. If your mind was everything, how can the person have a past life? How can the person have a future life? How can there be God, and how can there be humanity? The unknown is wild, and wilderness means it's beyond preparation. Something I haven't mentioned in these talks, and maybe in this episode I'll just share a snippet, but my father, in real life, is a person who has felt that he has remembered, like, his past life. That idea was real to him, right? And imagine being the son of someone who believes in past lives, when you're someone who, of course, being a kid, I'm like, I had the humble attitude, I don't know anything. But, just a second, guys, laptop's gonna die. I gotta resurrect my laptop. Pre-resurrect. And, imagine being, this is where I'll continue on. Imagine that someone you really care about holds an ideology that you don't understand, and then you begin trying to figure out that ideology, to come to the realization that artwork can be perceived in time, but that is the privilege of the art. The reason in my school of thought, in many talks I've said this, that I'm a person who, when it comes to the soul, I don't believe the soul has a personality. The personality is the mind's doing. The soul doesn't have a personality. That's my view. Now, with that view, that the soul doesn't have a personality, it means truth doesn't have a shape. Ladies and gentlemen, if truth doesn't have a shape, what are we looking for? Could it be that the one who is looking is instantaneously the ultimate truth? Could it be that our eyes, when directed outwards, are deceived? When directed inwards, they are already supreme. I am telling you, there is something about our minds that is being ignored. And you know what it is? It's as if we have advanced technology, but we haven't explored it enough to use it. Imagine, somebody gave a technology, or let's say an alien came down and, what was like, hey, human beings, do you want a technology that helps you access, multiple worlds at any time, allows you to manage and store image, and allows you to even project image of the future and various manifestations of what reality could be, all behind your eyes? Would you want that technology? And we'd be, as human beings, like, no, buddy, we already have it. And that's the point. There is access to our intelligence is multidimensional technology. And I am willing till the end of time, not as an individual, but just this, as long as I'm here on this earth, to anybody can challenge me. Because if time was gone, how could we have a personality? It's a very chaotic idea. The timeless is like it's like eternity. I made this joke in one of the talks where I'm like, two eternal beings were having a conversation, and one of them looks around, two eternal beings are like standing, and one of them turns around to the other eternal being and says, hey, do you have the time? And the other one just stares, and they both start laughing. This eternal laughter. I feel this eternal laughter will find the human species, but probably 3,600 years from now. Internally, you can attain unity with the realm. You can find complete allegiance with the natural world. And the way you do this is by abiding by your decency. Like, I don't care what kind of human being you are, what you have done as a human being on this earth, at any point, even right now as I'm talking, everybody has access to a decency resonance. The decency resonance isn't your intuition or conscience, because those are sort of those are signs from the universal sector, I would say. But when it comes to the decency resonance, it means a level of simplicity where ego can function still. That's decency. And usually the decent individual, what happens to it in society, it is deceived. But imagine if from the beginning you were deceived. Your only way out of the simulation would be decency. To truly be like, I'm alive once, and in some sense, what is the value of this writing? Because look at this picture I've chosen for this episode. This picture is showing how small we are, but because we can see the big, we have access to becoming big. That means if there was no space for improvement, why would there be any motivational speakers in the world, right? There is something here that is not something. It's as if I remember saying this to my family, and it was like the very strange moment where I looked at my family and I'm like, behind the idea of the self, there is nothing. And it was just like this intense silence in my family. And I went on to explain that beyond notions of self, and once one truly recognizes the eyes are watching emptiness in emptiness, then there is a strange freedom. What that means is, imagine we have lived as a mind first, and if you have completely lived as a mind, you get to live as a mind with a body. And now you have a body, and if anything happens to the body, you go back to the level of mind you were before, poetically speaking. So what I mean by this is that you will go to the previous format of reality that is closest to your last action before, let's call it final transition, before liftoff from Earth. The world moves in ways where we will never be able to understand, but what else do? We have to try, You see, unity is a powerful idea, but it is also the destroyer of worlds for the individual. That means, imagine there's a bunch of ways civilization can be designed. In the future, if there's technology, you can say, imagine everybody becomes clones. That would be a chaotic reality. Imagine everybody becomes machines. That's chaotic reality. Imagine everybody stops being an individual, and instead of piloting their outer realms and piloting their inner realms, and in some sense having the both wings of the plane kind of in the air at the same time, with a symmetrical way of walking in this life, imagine that we just say, forget individualism, everybody be just like this one giant moment of energy. And let's say we do that, then there would be no individual, and the same thing would have to reset. So anytime, you know what it is? It's like this. Unconscious world, unconscious self, conscious world, unconscious world, conscious self, unconscious world, unconscious self, conscious world. And again, just it repeats. That means, imagine we were all collective right now. Right, we were all one being right now. If we were one being, we'd be like, yo, what if we were separate? And you see, the whole cycle repeats, right? So I have this view that the cycle of karma is actually this whole oscillation between individual and collectivehood. And really it is to find a strategy for the human, what we call the human being, to look into a human mirror to notice its being. That means it's like when a person wants to update their, let's say, physical body, they get inspired by other physical bodies. When a person wants to update their behavior, they get inspired by the other behavior. Let's say you're a warrior, you want to update your technique, you get inspired by other warriors, greater warriors, right? And so when it comes to the mystery of the mind, that's a privilege I feel like we're all bestowed, but I may be one of the few who has noticed it. That only, I shouldn't say only, but it's like the human mind is a privilege to experience multiple bodies at the same time. It's multi-presence. And so many days I wake up and I'm like, why is everyone here? Why is everything here? And that is like the best motivation for me. because you really, in life, if when there is nothing to do, you challenge yourself, right? So imagine somebody who's a warrior who has only fought in the battlefield, and this warrior gets stranded on an island. This warrior gets stranded on this island, imagine, and all he can do is be his own enemy and challenge himself, right? So the mind fights. It's the same way of saying that in some sense, that moment, what was his name? That moment that Tom Hanks in the movie Castaway was fighting with the volleyball called Wilson. That's a way of, I'm trying to say, it's like it's like the mind externalizes to keep the body company, But really what it is, it's just the ability to see life force in others. Because we're alive, everything we look at can be as animate as the life we are. I want to read for the audience 2 quotes. One quote is from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. I believe he's a German poet. He says, "Behavior is the mirror in which everyone shows their image." A person's behavior is how they have seen themselves so far. If a person is violent, that's how they have formulated a self to themselves in their inner realm. But really, there's a self-reflective component. Right now, I have no idea who's listening to this and who will go on to listen to this talk in the world, right? All I have is my own universe of how far I've seen, and that, in some sense, perceiving the outer, and just like how we read words and they have images, they mean something. It's like we see people and they have a meaning, but it's the same thing as reading going on, where the mind is seeing the soul of the other. So really it's like this question that if we were souls, could 2 souls ever see each other? That means the soul is a very solipsistic idea. That means it's its own universe. That's why in all this New Age communities, you see power of the soul, or strength of the spirit, or whatever. So all of that is, in some sense, you know what it is? It's just changing the ego to an abstract one, so there is more internal freedom for the outer realm to move differently. Because we get tired of reality, and I don't know how many people care to solve a problem. To me, when there is a problem that approaches me, or I notice an important problem, I cannot, believe it or not, I can't sleep unless I know what will happen to that problem and what will happen to me, So there is something that, like some people they call them a neat freak. I'm like sometimes an ideological neat freak, where it's like I keep looking at something until I realize what the inner realm geometry is, and what that inner realm, what of that inner realm geometry relates to that. Because it's just world, I don't want to say world mirroring, but it's like world sculpting. That's what our personalities are doing. They're expressing their own intake of the world, we can observe the psychology of 2 potential people. Let's say person A and person B. Let's say I'll give you this analogy. Let's say we have 2 twins, okay? 2 twins. These twins are separated, and if twins are separated, technically they're just like 2 different people. But I'll tell you, okay, imagine we have 2 twins, and one of them from the let's say they live up to the age 40, okay, and One of them has, from the beginning of its life, people have been speaking to that person honorably, kind, compassionately, gracefully, nobly. To the other one, they've been treating it as if like a nuisance in the room. Okay? So imagine, I'm just saying, imagine this, right? And imagine the psychology of person A, you know, or of one of the twins, T1 and T2, okay? Or oh man, this is very hard. Let's say TZ and TX. Two twins, you know, X and, you know, Z are abstract enough, you know. So let's say twin X and twin Z, or twin A and twin Z. Twin A has been treated heavenly, and twin B has been treated hellishly. And what that means is these two individuals have gone in the realm. One human child just took in, just saw chaos approach it. The other human saw order approach it. What's funny is that because life is a long journey, eventually how your childhood was will get filled out with all the decisions you will go on to consciously make. You know, so what I mean by that is both those twins will in life at some point notice their blind spot. You know, life is a journey where beyond destruction, creation, and change, there is integration towards an ultimate destination. And the moment the being realizes, like right now, I would say maybe 90% our humanism is real and 10% our being is real to us. That means people are living 90% as an idea and 10% they're actually seeing what's going on in life. 90% of it is an overlay upon life, imagine. Anyways, life is a changing picture. And because the world is accessed through the senses, the world is a changing picture. Now, this picture can change unconsciously or it can change consciously. Right now, as I'm giving this talk, I am changing my own picture, at least consciously. But life, its totality is an unconscious change, which means an unknown, a macro unknown event is taking place, and we, an unconscious macro event and a conscious micro event, and we are from the conscious micro event feeling like something more is happening in the universe, but not being able to, in some sense, consciously access the unconscious. Or as Carl Jung says, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Like, just think about that for a moment. You know, unless you engage the unknown variables in your life, your knowledge can't expand. And people think knowledge is about learning. That's why I'm saying you gotta have questions, because the questions are your attention to the unknown variable. You know, we're living in a time where not only ancient religions, their remnants remain. We have modern religions, and we even have, you can say, esoteric communities. And all of this is a suggestion of how human beings want to establish a relationship with the unknown. You know, that means, imagine there's someone talking about spirituality, Zen, you know, oneness, and then an alien lands on Earth, right? And imagine there's like this guru who has a seminar, right? And all the people from the guru's seminar run outside, you know, and the guru's like, why are you guys going? I'm talking about the divine, you know? And everybody's like, yo, an alien just landed on Earth. You kidding me? And that's why I'm saying we are so deeply attached to the sensory that to fathom the invisible, we feel it is in some sense like, what do we do with the infinite visibility? And really, guys, I'm of course speaking, and my whole talk is about how language is hollow, it's a simulation. So in reality, it's not like we have to do anything. Like, energy has no agenda. It is when energy wants to continue in a certain form that it has agenda, right? We human beings, we deceive ourselves to avoid pain. We externalize our fears in order to avoid accepting them. And I would say the golden human being in society is the human being that has accepted their perception. And that acceptance, in its most simplest format, will lead you to the complex. So this is here's Mr. Within's approach to the complex. We accept the simple. The moment we have accepted the simple, any attempt at the complex, if we fail, we come back to a place where we had acceptance. If someone has failed a couple times and then they failed, it doesn't bother them as someone who has never failed, right? Someone who has never failed, it breaks their heart, shatters their universe. But someone who has failed, or someone who has been pushed by the world a couple times, they know how to stand, you know? A person who, in their inner realms, they have walked through sandstorms, ideological sandstorms. I'm telling you, after a point, you just get a sense of how your mind has been functioning this whole time. And you notice how there is a sort of external thing to thought. And I'll tell you how I'm I'll give you evidence of this, like legit evidence. Okay. So anytime you see someone speak, and let's say anytime someone is asked a question, you will notice their biological eyes move to different angles, you know? And you know why that's happening? because the mind is projecting the memory outside of the self. So when we remember something, we are time traveling in our inner realms. When we visualize something in the future, I wouldn't call it time traveling. I would say we are abstract traveling. Because time is an excuse to not be alone. Because that level of loneliness, like I totally understand why not everybody was a yogi on the planet, right? Because it takes an incredible amount of universal courage, I would say, to want to see want to see beyond the veil of sensory reality, and to even wonder if there's something more. Like, this should be the coolest thing. You know, it's like wondering if technology never distracted us, what in the world would we be paying attention to? You know what it is, guys? It's like the observance of thought is like, or the act of what we call thinking, which is the observer moving through ideology, swimming through ideology. It's as if we are able to observe an object or subject from multiple angles, and every time we're observing the thought, it's like a blacksmith hitting a hammer on a sword, straightening the sword out, right? I will tell you, people will be fascinated to realize how many ways a person can speak about something. It's remarkable. I would say it's one of the wonders of the mind, that any object considered as a subject becomes a point where endless lines can go through. Through endless dualistic contexts, we can simulate realms. That means it's like a cheat code. It's like a cheat code to psychology. The moment you realize dualistic thinking, or as Alan Watts called it, polar thinking. The image can change at any moment. what I am pretty much doing in these talks and what a podcast is that it's like the ears are reading. And this is how you can tell somebody is more in their inner realms than outer realms, how much they care for the outer realms, how much they're willing to, for a moment, stop being themselves and wonder how the eyes of other points of intelligence in the realm perceive. Because then you care about elegance, right? That was a concept I really didn't care for, But now I can tell you it's like life definitely has a style to it. And if the person is patient with their communication and speech, it's like an idea enters the inner realm, they perceive an inner event, then the person has to be patient, not reacting to that inner realm idea instantly. Patient in a sense where through a couple nanoseconds they see multiple contexts and then they share. And every person is using language in the same way the caveman used sticks and stones to make fire, you know what I mean? We're all just, expressing a level of intelligence, And intelligence is so unknown and vast, like anybody who has measured intelligence, it's like, that's low intelligence, Because I'm telling you, it's a game of subjectivism. And if reality is more than a subject, that means all are objective and subjective is in some sense I don't know how to say it, but we're just advanced technology. This advanced technology simulates life over life to make sense of it. When it has come to, I don't know why I'm going back to this, but I think maybe there's more I can share about it. About past life regression. Like sure, the mind can leap, the mind can teleport into arbitrary psychology-based realities. Like what I mean by this is like a person can close their eyes, and if you tell them visualize a giant robot, the person can visualize a giant robot, let's say. Let's say you saw the movie Pacific Rim, somebody tells you visualize a giant robot, and you just visualize a giant robot. Now, let's say you're a person who is trying this past life regression approach. You're trying to reverse engineer to the source to figure out who you are or what you are or whatever is going on, right? And let's say as you do this, right, imagine you get to the last memory where you were like a baby in a cradle and that's the earliest you can remember, and then it jumps from nothing, from you can say maybe a period of 10 seconds to 20 seconds of nothing if you're very still, and suddenly the mind jumps to imagine suddenly your mind simulates a planet that's, let's say the sky is orange, instead of blue, and there's giant robots but there's nobody in them and they're kind of walking that's that idea came at the edge of the last memory, but in some sense we can say it's is it the Pacific Rim idea or is that the person's past life? You know what I mean? So it depends on the realism, right? So in some sense what we're calling past life is actually unconscious certainty of an experience that is now in an unconscious. Like who I was yesterday, that's in the unconscious. It went into the unknown. I just knew it yesterday, I lived it yesterday, and then when I slept and woke up, it was okay, yesterday lived its life and in some sense fulfilled it. And it's kind of mind-blowing, that we all go to sleep very relaxed, but then the idea of death scares the shit out of us, We are conscious and we have the opportunity to understand the world. In the subtitle, when I write an image-based existence, the inspiration I had was really to, aside from image, what else do we have access to? Everything in language has to be an image, or what are we talking about, right? So knowledge is image. Knowledge is image-based. But an image is like, what is it? It's like 1/5 of reality. And we haven't even gone into the metaphysics of considering that every one of the 5 senses is its own universe. That means there's just a universe where there's only taste to the universe, nothing else. That means every time a person tastes something, it's as if it's like the brain is processing, articulating, or the systems like the thunderstorms in the brain are in some sense just calculating nothing else other than a universe of taste, just the taste. So what it is like the brain is juggling universes, and the attention is like consciousness. So it's really like a spotlight on this giant treadmill where a theater performance is taking place. The spotlight doesn't move, the treadmill does. The treadmill is the infinite changing universe. The spotlight is the seer within that is unseen. That means the seer of the seen is unseen, as the Vedas say. And so, beyond images, the human idea will be experientially identified. As an experiential being, the concept of freedom no longer becomes the evolutionary graduation point. The conscious of presence becomes the superior teaching of the intelligence. Any being who truly comprehends their presence, they are on their way out of the simulation, because that is the end of the road. You play the game. It's like a soccer game, and you play the game and you play every position, and after some point you're like, could there be other games, right? And so you go beyond the game of the senses. And the player is like a universal activity. Who says we can't be universes? We're being in one. We're being the part of the energy of like everything. Isn't that crazy? Can you imagine, writing on your resume, attained God consciousness of one universally intelligent unknown energy, Can you imagine? And like the employer looks at you and is like, sir, can you explain the statement? The statement on your resume. I'll be honest, the intelligence of love, the intelligence of playfulness, the intelligence of humor, the intelligence of decency, the intelligence of honesty, the intelligence of non-aggressive justice, civilized justice. And by civilized, I don't mean like right now we're civilized. Right now we're all acting like animals, even though we think we're civilized. When I say civilized, I mean we have a complete, I don't want to say disgust, but it's like this world is not for violent elemental behavior anymore. It's for mind movement. That's what I'm trying to usher in. This is the fastest approach to a world peace that is smart enough to let, from multidimensional angles, updates to take place in society, right? Because when you have a multidimensional perspective, you don't know at what level of multidimensionality you need to stop to judge a person, right? Or it's like an infinite regression. It's like, let's say you're someone who you have had a tough childhood, and so what you do is you blame, let's say, your parents, and then your parents blame their parents, and then their parents blame their parents, and eventually it's like a regression to infinity where at no point you can, unleash judgment. It's like we are an attributeless, non-physical, complete moment of reception. And when it comes to expression, we are an embodied individual that can have infinite angles of perception, but it's temporary. How hilarious is that? It's like the universe is designed so humorously, where it's like, yeah, human being, while you're alive, run eternally, but then the simulation, when it ends, it's as if what happened to the eternal dream. The eternal dream falls. So the smartest strategy is for the inner realm to find a way for the outer realm to carry on its significance. And a lot of civilization, a lot of human beings every day on this planet are closing their eyes, and their inner realms have never been seen by the world. And I feel like, holy shit, right? We should have, like, in the future, robots writing autobiographies for everyone as accurately as, a compassionate surveillance state allows, through an updated human psychology, right? Because technology is like somewhat, you can say, like, it's like a knife. So you can use it to cut fruit and have a healthy diet, or you can use the technology to be a savage wild animal. And you can say honor is a sort of behavioral law, right? When I say a behavioral law, that means when you honor a principle of the universe, it doesn't matter what personality you are, the context of your moment is kept that way. For example, I honor the living earth. That means this earth to me is alive, and I am alive, and it's a symbiosis. And this symbiosis is based on how much the person, this is where emotions are a greater wisdom than language, where emotional learning, I would say, is like a privilege. It's very strange, but it's like emotions are as rare as like explorations of uncharted land. Alright, let me see where I can take this episode. I gotta land the plane at some point. I gotta land this live stream, you know. Alright, here's the thing. Changing pictures of the world. We are drawing some of the pictures and the world is drawing us, and that's kind of like the symbiosis I was implying. Now in this co-creation of man, world, and other kinds of human beings in the world, right? So it's as if like we're all like the X-Men poetically, and it's as if but on a DNA micro level, we're like the X-Men, we're all different with different abilities and different capabilities, and now we are trying to find one common area where we're like, okay, an advanced civilization will theoretically have an advanced human being. What would be the image of that advanced human being? What would be the psychology of that advanced human being? What would be the freedom of the dimensions of perception of that human being? Please tell me this isn't on mute. Yeah, okay. You know, some people get fascinated when they remember, you know, another incident, another moment in the space-time continuum irrelevant to the, you can say, to the terraform. I would say there was a yogi, this was written in the Puranas, there was this yogi where this yogi had remembered 75, he had been through 7,500 apocalypses. Can you imagine having that kind of yogic, you know, mystical street cred? You know, they're like, this yogi realized he was enlightened yesterday. This other yogi, however, has been through 7,500 apocalypses and is also, you know, enlightened. You know, totally different level. It's like that means the person had such a complex ability to observe their inner realm where they managed to see the unfoldment of the geometry of the time. For me, there are spirits in the realm, and when I say spirits, I don't mean like ghosts and shit, like that's child's play. I'm talking about collective giant energy spheres. Imagine if they're on the planet, right? And these, what I would say, each one of them is like the spirit of a certain karmic, it's as if on the surface of the planet is a film and we are not the director in it, we're the actor, and anytime we act like the director in this film, there is karma. And so as the actor, right, as the actor plays its role, its faith is in the director. This is literally on film sets. Like the actor is there to follow, to in some sense be itself, but also to make the director smile as if he has found his treasure. You know? So the director was behind the scenes. And imagine there's moments where the director paused and went up to the actor and talked to the actor. You know, and this could be a metaphor for all the prophets in the religion. So you see, it is this theater, right? It's like this, all right, you know, time to be an individual with all these values and, you know, social reform of psychology, you know. But then at some point, the soul wants to just roar. You know, it's like we want to be free, we want to fly. You know, there was that hilarious scene in the film. I think it was called. Oh man, what was it called? It was like Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell, and there's a scene where Mark Wahlberg says, I'm a peacock, I just want to fly. And it's like some person in the, you know, in that scene was like, did he say he's a peacock, that he wants to fly? Because peacocks can't fly, you know. They are actually very fashion-oriented animals. It's kind of strange. And fashion is really just the use of color, and, you know, and like, what else can it be? What I mean by this is like it's like the sensory perception is outlining. Like the best fashion, I could totally see the fashion of the future will be neon cloth. Neon cloth is going to be like the fashion of the future. You know, people who are walking with jackets that are just neon green. Like that would be, fashion could be a step towards cyberspace, and the whole cyberpunk culture. It has been really like the motive for the cyberpunk culture. Self-expressionism towards anarchist freedom neutralizes everything, but in the giving everything equality and there being no system of law, which is what an anarchy is, right? When there's no system governing the moment and everybody's free, that's pretty much like, again, animal level. So too much freedom, we become animals. Too little freedom, we become animals. And we have to find that middle ground and build an advanced civilization in that privilege for consciousness, as I was saying earlier. The days go by, how many oxygen particles journey through our body. And literally, it's like we are part of the poetry of the earth, That means right now there is no Mr.Within, there is no MW1634, there is just a world that's happening, and that's how the voice is. And my voice, like, look at what kind of world we're living in, where one person gives a talk and 8 billion different minds hear different talks. So literally, based on the views this video gets, it's like a suggestion of how many universes of this talk exist. It's fascinating. The world of language has been avoided, and we have to master the linguistic simulation, then realize Tony Stark can leave the Iron Man suit and attain samadhi. Because the idea of a conditional life is a lie to oneself when we don't know what the future holds. Like right now, I have no idea. Even though I have vision, the brain projects probabilities and strategies all the time. But I'm saying, in regards to really, if I was to be honest about tomorrow and all the days to come, to me, it's just like I'm watching infinity, duality, as a singularity in the void. So I am like, the mind is a singular technology. Let's say the body is a dualistic technology. The sky is an infinite technology. And the world is held in emptiness. Imagine a story where a kid was late to class and the teacher's like, "Why are you late? Apologize." And the kid's like, "I'm not gonna apologize." The teacher's like, "How dare you be so rude?" And the kid's like, "I'm not being rude." And the teacher says, "Explain." And the kid says, "Listen, because there is an underlying context of emptiness, time is man-made. So in accordance to your time, I am late. In accordance to my time, I'm never late." You see? That's what I'm saying. It's like we're living in the imagination of history, not realizing that the reality of our eyes actually have access to truth. It's an experiential thing. That's why, at some point, I probably have to do more than just, write books and give talks and stuff. Like 100%, I gotta do something more for people. But I don't know. The best thing is establish a network of human beings who care to wonder about what's going on. What else can be better than that? For without advanced communication, that means, here's the thing: we deserve an advanced civilization the moment we have had an advanced observance of ourselves. If we have not perceived an advanced observance of ourselves, we will never understand why in the outer realms the greatest strategy is to be the greatest thing. You know what it is? It's kind of like I'm a person who has an impatience for how the past tried to solve it and how the present has no clue what to do about the future. So really, it's all like, it's left to, the best strategy, best method. A method is a strategy, to be honest. It's a strategy towards a certain outcome. That means whether a person is doing a science experiment, or whether it's a general, let's say, giving a command to an army in some sense to go to battle to defend the kingdom or whatever. The spirits in the world are how far our eyes accept thereof. And after the person, let's say, they get rid of their own ego, they gotta get rid of the ego they have created for the world. And that's the thing not a lot of people know about. They think that it's only themselves that they worry about. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. And study your eyes. They are the stargates of information. They are really the only true teacher. Because one's awareness of their consciousness is always with them, but one's consciousness of their awareness is not always with them. And to truly be free in our inner realms, we should be already walking in a free world. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening.